my name is Cheyenne Strickland. I'm the collections assistant here at the Anniston Museum of Natural History. To wrap up our 90th anniversary video series, we sat down with several people involved in the museum after it moved to its current location. Keep watching to learn about the changes the museum continues to undergo even today. So I'm Cheyenne, the collections assistant at Anniston Museum of Natural History, and today I'm with Pete Conroy. Pete, why don't you tell me about how you got started at the museum back, when was it, in the 80s?
Yeah, it was 1985. Thanks, and by the way, this is like crazy fun for me to be thinking about so long ago. And really, if it hadn't been for the Anniston Museum of Natural History, I wouldn't have been led to all the other things I've been able to get involved with. And the reason I came here, it was totally kind of an accident. I had lost a job opportunity somewhere else. I get into Aviso, which was a museum job market, and read about Anniston, Alabama. Hadn't really given Alabama any thought. I drive over here and do a job interview, and got a new suit, had a briefcase, get out of the car, and immediately going into the interview, I'm thinking it's the end of the world because I hear machine gun fire. I hear bombs going off, like lots of them. And I literally went back into my car and turned on the radio. This is 1985, just to make sure that there wasn't an end of the world notice, like war breaks out in Alabama. Within 30 minutes, I recognized that the former Fort McClellan was active and very active, and things blowing up and machine gun fire became part of a normal day. And but that was my going in for the interview. Got the job and met so many amazing people. Every single person that I met, has been a gift. And since coming to Anniston, because of all these people, I feel like I'm the richest guy in the world. The education group ultimately grew, and I was able to hire this guy named Dan Spalding, and he was an amazing character, still is, and it was a great team. Add the third layer, which was the docents, and I think at the time it may have been one of the highest levels of docent training, and I think I remember hundreds of volunteers at the time. I'm sure you still have hundreds, but it all was like a family situation. The museum was, you work at the museum, it's a real honor, just being able to, by telling somebody, where you work, even if you weren't all that smart or all that great, people would think you were because you worked at the Anniston Museum.
I know when the museum was originally built, it was kind of just this big wide open space, and they just kind of built exhibits up as they went. Did you see any major changes in the museum during your time there, whether it was exhibits, or I know you had a lot to do with the nature trails outside? How did it kind of evolve in your time?
I wasn't involved in any of the major construction projects, but building up collections for sure, and then acquiring collections. As I kind of think about walking through there, I remember when we were working on Dynamic Earth, I wanted the meteor that hit the lady in Silicaca. I wanted that thing so bad, and the story as it goes, she was sitting on a couch like this, and I don't know, watching TV, and a meteor rips through her ceiling and hits her in the back. And I remember her posing in some magazine, looking pitiful with a big old bruise, right? And I thought, certainly we can get that. And I spent so much time trying to acquire it, finally gave up, and then negotiated with Japanese to get the meteor that's there right now. And I remember having a budget constraint, and ultimately we got the price to where it needed to be. Got a meteor out of the deal. The ichthyosaur that's in the floor, I remember stealing tools that my dad had that he was no longer using, and they're still in the floor, wrapped up to look like old archaeological tools. And the cave, though, was a magical place. I remember that we'd make a big deal about all the different animals that were portrayed in there, and in one bullfrog, the plastic bullfrog. The thing that would strike me about that bullfrog was that in the years I worked at the museum, it was dozens of children that saw that plastic bullfrog breathe. They would stop each other and say, "Look, you look at that thing. I see it. It's breathing. How do they do that?" And years later, I had an episode with Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, and I told him about that. And I remember I was also talking about visitor behavior, data collection, and statistic-driven museum development, and he said, I remember he talked just like he talked on TV, but he said, "Mr. Conroy, museums aren't built by the data. They're not designed by the engineers. They're made special by the children, and the children make them special because of the magic." And every time I look at that frog, every time I look at that bullfrog, I think of Mr. Rogers telling me about the magic. And after the thousands of kids you've seen, magic plays a big role in a place like the Aniston Museum. I love birds of prey and would give a lot of talks with them. In fact, one of the ways I was able to pay for my undergraduate college was through giving bird of prey talks at summer camps during the summer. And I gave a lot of talks with a lot of bird of prey. And that evolved into my doing presentations, in and around Aniston and then all around Alabama. And oftentimes when I could, I'd take a bird of prey with me, because there's just nothing better than a hawk or an owl to capture the attention and the imagination of your audience. And at the end of one particular presentation, Alabama Power Company had me for one of their annual meetings in Birmingham. And at the end of the presentation, they brought an envelope up to me, and it was a check that enabled the museum to buy all the baleen cages and start the bird of prey trail. And for me, that was really special, because I didn't see that project completed while I was working there. But now that I have a 10-year-old kid and a wonderful wife that takes my 10-year-old kid to the museum every chance they get, it's fun for them to I don't think they know where the bird of prey cages came from, but it's fun to know that you all are maintaining a great environment for environmental education and stuff like that.
I'm Georgia Underwood Calhoun. I was a teacher in Aniston City School System when I became a member of the League Board. And the League Board was to get financial aid that we could for the museum. And I was the only person of color on that board. I was on the League Board for about 10 years, but during that time, I decided, what can I do? I knew as a teacher, in order to get children to parents to PTAs, you had to put their children on program. So I said, I'm going to have a festival and get these children involved, and then the parents will come. And the first festival we had was outside, and we did it Caribbean style. We had a table of food, and it was called like a tasting bee. We had all the soul foods and everything. Now, when I started that festival, I asked my AKA sisters to come in and help, and the Missionary Society at Mount Calvary, where I was attending church at that time. And so they came with just lots of food. Well, the AKA stayed on to help, So that was the first festival. And I think we had a band, it was a brass band from Mississippi, steel brass band from Mississippi. And it was outside, it was just so enjoyable, with everybody was dressed festival like, we just had a good, like Caribbean style thing. Okay, then I said, well, February is Black History Month, so why can't I just move it to Black History Month? Now, one thing, Mark he worked with me to let me do this. And he mentioned, well, why are you just using AKAs? I said, that's my sorority. He said, well, there are other sororities and fraternities that you could use. I said, well, too many folks don't work together too good. So we limited it to the AKAs. All right, then the second festival we had, it just revealed to me that, you know, artists, black writers have not been put into the books for our children, and they don't know anything about the history. So why can't I say, let's have an oratorical contest, something of the sort. So then I decided, well, we'll just let them get poems, and let the poems be by black authors. And you have to be competitive, and you have to speak clearly. Well, we had all the qualifications lined up for them. And so the second festival came off good. I think we had maybe about 700 that first one.
So what are some of the changes you've seen around here?
Well, of course, a lot of changes in the architect. And my being at the museum, I was here quite often. And at one time I was appointed the liaison between the schools and the museum. Mm-hmm. And then I would see that the traveling trunks got to the schools and got back on time. And I have been here when they needed another docent. And I have served as a docent. So I have served in almost every capacity here, you know, at the museum. Now, not only did we see changes for the auditorium and it is now, but I remember when we sent the mummies to New York to have them refurbished. The bridge to the African exhibit was made, well, it was sponsored by Miss Beanie Holloway, who had also an award named for her. And I received that award one time. But the bridge that went to the African display was built by this Norwegian that she brought with her from Chicago. Mm-hmm. And he didn't speak too much English, but we just loved him.
What would you say has been the greatest change around here that you've noticed?
The greatest change, I can see difference in personalities. I can see, and of course, the difference that you made with changing things up, good. But there's more acceptance and there's more, let's say, just more friendliness, I suppose. Mm-hmm.
Speaking from your viewpoint as a previous educator, how vital would you say the museum is to local curriculum?
You know, this museum is, it is just worldwide known as being one of the best museums in the Southeast. And to the curriculum of the schools, they have so much to offer if teachers just only, you know, integrated into their studies, you know, for children. And to bring the children out here for field trips is a great thing.
Well, my name is Josephine Aves, and I think what I've mainly done in this community in terms of the arts is this museum, as well as the Alabama Shakespeare Festival.
Well, how long would you say you've been involved with the museum?
Well, since the late 60s, John B. Lagarde asked me to help in trying to persuade the city to build a museum. We started with a study which I wrote detailing the needs of the culture, the community of culture here in Anniston. And among the recommendations was an arts and culture center down in the middle of town, which would include a concert venue, a theater, and the museum, which would house eventually both the Regar collection and the collection of John B. Lagarde of the animals of the African wildlife.
So you got to see the transition between the museum being housed downtown between the Carnegie and the Calhoun County War Memorial Building to it moving up here. So what was it like, when the museum was first constructed where it is now?
Well, it was very exciting for those of us who had been involved in thinking about this possibility. While this didn't turn out to be the comprehensive complex that we had envisioned, I think it turned into more than we had dreamt of.
So having been involved with the museum from, you said the 60s to now, 2020, and even beyond now, is there any one change or exhibit or figure that just really sticks out to you as like a favorite or,
Well, I'll say that I think the most significant change here in this facility is the new lobby. That has transformed people's introduction to this museum into a really exciting experience. Now the addition of the garden, which of course will take many years to bring to fruition, but that is the significant addition. And the Berman keeps growing in its offerings and in the interest in the community. So to be a part of this complex is so important to us at this museum and to the sister organizations. And this complex is really critical to the community.
If John B. or Mr. Regar or Mr. Werner could see that now their collection is a part of this larger facility where we have the Berman Museum, we have the Longleaf Botanical Gardens, do you think they would be excited to know that?
Oh, I think certainly John B. and Farley Berman would be very excited. They were both people of great enthusiasms, and they were great collectors in their fields. And so I believe they would be very thrilled. And to add a botanical garden element to this property is something that I think we can all be really happy about.
It's always a pleasure talking with people who have been involved in the museum for so many years, and we thank them for their time. Next week, we take a look at all the ways the museum can benefit.